Welcome back, everyone. This is week 6 of UX Design Fundamentals. I'm Matt Humphreys. This week we're going to continue looking at the skeleton plane. Now I'm sure you remember the skeleton plane. Let's do a quick review before we get into the material of this week. The skeleton plane is defined as such. The conceptual structure begins to give shape to the massive requirements from our strategic objectives. On the skeleton plane, we further refine that structure, identify specific aspects of interface, navigation, and information design that will make intangible structure concrete. We pull together all of our previous deliverables from the strategy, scope, and structure plane, and we start to formulate the skeleton of our experience. When we define the skeleton, we look at it in 3 intermixed ways. The deliverables are, on the information side, navigation design, on the functionality side, interface design, and covering them both and overarching them is information design. Now, last week we looked at interface design, but this week we're going to cover navigation design and information design. Interface design is the art of arranging the content elements on a screen. And we spent the majority of our time last week talking about how best to organize things in the right hierarchy and priority. Successful interfaces are ones that users immediately notice important stuff. So priority and hierarchy are number 1 here. We need to think about the mental state or the mental model of the user at every point of the interaction. And we need to respect technology limits, but don't accept them blindly. Our first topic for this week is going to be navigation. And in this module, we'll talk about navigation design. The navigation design loosely is described as the art of leading users through your experience. How does a user get from point A to point B? We use techniques in navigation design to make that happen. In navigation design, there are 3 general rules. The first is that your navigation needs to provide a means of getting from one place to another. That should seem pretty simple. Any navigation structure in the real world provides ways and means of getting from one place to another, whether it be a sign on a telephone pole or a map in your hand or on your phone. The second of the 3 general rules is that navigation design needs to communicate the relationship between the elements it contains. So for every navigation structure, the elements contained within it need to be cohesive. There needs to be a relationship, a reason why they are grouped together. And the third of the 3 general rules is that navigation needs to communicate the relationship between this content and the page being viewed. Why am I shown this navigation structure on the page that I'm looking at? Why, when I click on this navigation structure, does it lead me to the page that I'm going to? All of those questions need to be answered and should be very cohesive and intuitive to your users. So let's review these 3 general rules now that they're all displayed on the screen together. Navigation design needs to provide a means of getting from one place to another. It needs to communicate the relationship between the elements it contains. And finally, it needs to communicate the relationship between this content and the page being viewed. So the content within the navigation element and the page that it's present on. So why is navigation important? Well, between Apple's App Store and Google's Play Store, there are over 5 million apps, and they each have their own navigation design. Without even considering the web itself, there are already 5 million different ways of navigating. It's extremely important to spend time figuring out the best way to bring your users from where they end up to where you want them to be. The only way to do that is to take the time and create a very effective navigation. There are so many different ways of navigating that it's in our best interest to look at convention and metaphor, similar to what we discussed last week. Things like breadcrumbs, tabs, drop-downs, those are all conventions that we've seen before and are very established. All of those things that we interact with in everyday digital products are navigation design outputs. If we examine an everyday website that you travel today, I'm sure every single page has at least 3, if not 4 or 5 navigation elements, which are outputs from the navigation design phase. Navigation is not only important to get from point A to point B, but to points C, D, and E, and F as well. But if we have, for example, a little bit of a loose navigation structure that doesn't necessarily provide that clear a direction and intention, there could be exit points throughout. The user could lose their way, which could cause them doubt. And that inevitably leads to users leaving. And you don't want that to happen by all means. Navigation design is important because it results in this: a straight line, a clear shot between point A and point B. And in this case, it's your home page and your product page, the conversion point of which, of course, is purchasing a product, creating revenue, generating repeat business. And without navigation and a clear, structured navigation, this won't be possible. A well-designed business program must make its structure and organization as clear as possible. Users don't want to waste time solving the mystery of where things are hidden. I'm sure you can all relate to this quote by Alan Cooper. Navigation isn't fun. Having to think about navigation isn't fun. And having to discover things in a way that isn't familiar isn't fun either. That's it for this module, an introduction to navigation design. We're going to continue on this topic in the next module. See you there.